Good evening, everyone. My name is Roy Tanzman, and I am chair of the Jewish Federations of New Jersey and a past chair and member of the board of the Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey. Thank you for joining us this evening for this evening's Senatorial Candidates Forum featuring United States Senator Cory Booker and Dr. Rik Mehta. The COVID-19 pandemic has altered almost every aspect of the way we live and work and is impacting how we vote this November. Participating in the democratic process is a core American Jewish value, a civic and religious duty. During this unprecedented time, it is more important than ever that we, as Jewish communal leaders, educate ourselves about critical issues, hold elected officials accountable, and most importantly, turn out to vote. I am pleased that Jewish federations across New Jersey and AJC New Jersey have come together to sponsor this forum. We're diverse people in terms of our political views and Jewish religious affiliation. We all are inspired by the same Jewish values and care deeply about core issues like the US-Israel relationship, the rise of hate and anti-Semitism, and the Jewish imperative to care for the communities most vulnerable. In addition to hearing from each candidate, we will feature a moderated question and answer session that will give you an insider's perspective on both campaigns' positions, policies, and visions for New Jersey, our Jewish community, and the state of Israel. Due to the limited time we have with each candidate, we've asked them to deliver short opening statements and to limit their answers for each question to 2 minutes. Our first speaker this evening is Dr. Rik Mehta. Dr. Mehta owns and runs a consulting firm, R&R Strategies, and works as a partner at Licentium, a healthcare licensing technology firm. His professional experience also includes working as a consumer safety officer at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and teaching as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University Law Center and Rutgers University School of Health Professions. Dr. Mehta holds a bachelor's degree and JD from Rutgers University, a pharmacy doctorate from the University of Arkansas for medical sciences, and a joint LLM from Georgetown University Law Center and the Graduate Institute for International and Development Studies in Geneva, Switzerland. We appreciate Dr. Mehta being here with us tonight, and the floor is yours for opening remarks.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you to the Jewish Federation of New Jersey for having me. Chairman, appreciate the opening remarks and handing me the floor. It's an honor to be here tonight. For those who I haven't met before, I'm Rik Mehta, and it's really a pleasure to be here. And I appreciate the invitation to speak to you about my candidacy for United States Senate for what I think is probably one of the most important elections we've had here in America. My wife, Rima, and I, we're both first-generation Americans. We live in Morris County with our 3 little gentlemen and our dog, Dexter. Look, my story started 50 years ago when my father immigrated here through the legal process with only $100 in his pocket. My mother, she also worked 2 jobs and managed our household. Our story is like a lot of people here in New Jersey: humble beginnings, hard work, and the belief that the American dream is available to anyone willing to chase it. Everything that I have, everything that I am, every opportunity I have known, every degree I have earned, I owe to a courageous decision made by a man born to poverty in a country 8,000 miles from New Jersey. That man is my father, the eldest of 6 children, who in 1969 took stock of his plight and concluded that his only hope of freedom and happiness lie in a land which enshrined those words in our founding documents. I stand as a testament to that eternal promise made to all Americans, that however imperfect we may be at times, however short we may be in abiding the promise of our charter, we remain the beacon of hope to billions of people who wish to enjoy the fruits of freedom, free of the bondage that suffocates the human spirit in so many parts of the world. In few other lands would the son of an immigrant be allowed to run for the kind of office I seek, for the right to represent a state of 9 million people in the United States Senate in the most powerful and prosperous country in the world. I graduated from Rutgers School of Pharmacy, and I worked at Robert Wood Johnson Hospital. I put myself through law school when I worked overnights at Rutgers School of Law in Newark. I graduated and I went to the FDA. I spent years fighting to reduce prescription drug prices, cracking down on illegal, unapproved drugs, and removing dangerous opioids from our streets. I'm a pharmacist, and I believe in the truth of science. I'm an attorney who's helped the opioid crisis during my years at the FDA. I'm also a small business owner, one very sensitive to the plight of business owners who have had to manage and muddle their way through this pandemic without much help from our senators. I'm also a biotech entrepreneur, and I've actually repurposed my antibody technology to perform research in our fights against COVID. In fact, my company has an NIH-funded partnership with Mount Sinai Hospital, and as I speak, our team continues to generate data that we hope will contribute to the development of new therapeutics against this virus. I also come to you this evening with an agenda for putting our country on a new and better path, and a background that has prepared me well for the job that lay ahead. We are at war with the disease. It sickened 8 million Americans and killed close to 220,000. And I'm not here to cast blame, but I do have a plan to move us forward. Until the vaccine is here, we have to mobilize our best scientists in our domestic manufacturing facilities to produce mass rapid COVID tests that instantly detect the coronavirus. The testing kits should be distributed to all 50 states. Point of care testing should have already been available in our pharmacies and our schools, but we have governors that continue to put politics over policies. Honestly, as a father of 3, only then will parents really feel safe to send their children to school. Only then will people patronize our restaurants, our small businesses, board planes, shop in stores, stay in hotels, and return to work and do so in large numbers. Only when people feel safe to congregate will we have some semblance of normal return. As we move closer to a vaccine, it is a path along the road back to normalcy. Congress needs to pass an additional stimulus bill, and immediately. Many state and local governments, their reserves depleted, will soon be forced to lay off employees or raise taxes, neither of which is a good idea during a recession. In New Jersey, I'm disappointed that our governor continues to withhold funding when so many families need it. We haven't had a US Senator here in New Jersey to push to assure the proper distribution of our funds to our families. We need someone who represents New Jersey. We also need an extension of unemployment benefits for our workers, severely impacted by government shutdowns of their employers. It's going to take years for landlords to recover from moratoriums on rent payments by tenants. Small business owners, many who have taken personal guarantees for their loans. I know, I'm one of them. Mass bankruptcy filings by small businesses, property owners, and defaults on loans, it's going to threaten our banking sector and real estate market. Only the federal government can solve this liquidity problem before we end up with the mortgage crisis worse than 2008. Next, we have to re-domesticate our manufacturing of critical medical supplies from China. United States made a mistake when we allowed the manufacture of essential medical supplies in China. We no longer have a reliable domestic supply chain for medical equipment, ventilators, drugs to meet that demand. We've learned a lot during this pandemic that China is not and will never be a trusted trading partner if they operate a communist government. I literally saw the globalization of our supply chain to China under the Obama-Biden administration when I was at the FDA. We must have stronger trading ties with trusted governments on our medical supply like Israel and India. No American can expect that drugs manufactured in China can meet the same rigorous standards required of manufacturers who operate on American soil. Let us not forget that even before this pandemic, China created significant public health crises with contaminated medicines, contaminated with carcinogens, rocket fuel, created shortages in our essential medical supply. It's time for drugs and medical companies to shutter their facilities in China and bring those jobs back to New Jersey. I'm the right guy to do it. These are vital steps that must be taken to win the war against COVID. There are other things on my agenda, like fixing our mass transit system, securing the funds to build a gateway tunnel, restoring state and local tax deduction, winning the Cold War against China, and bringing some level of civility back to our politics and political discourse. My opponent, Senator Booker, he missed more than 65% of the votes in Senate last year. That's more than any other senator or congressperson in Washington. That's not the top of the list New Jersey deserves. We need someone who will represent our interests, someone who wants to do the job. That someone is me. So tonight, I'm here to answer your questions, some of my views on Israel, things that matter the most to the Jewish community, that matter the most to New Jersey, that matter the most to Americans. Israel is a nation I consider a vital strategic partner in trading, in commerce, and economic growth. You're also going to hear me talk about why we need to have Israel as a vital military ally in a region of the world where America needs friends, and why I will do all in my power to strengthen our bond with one of our most important allies. See, unlike my opponent, I put trust in our allies, and I'm never going to forsake the bonds that spread our democracy and preserve our freedoms. So thank you, Chairman. I look forward to answering your questions this evening. I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Mehta. We'll now move on to the question and answer period of the program, taking questions from the audience. We ask that each of your responses to each question be limited to 2 minutes. Our first question is from Rachel Tkatch, JCRC Executive Committee member at the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey. Rachel?
The pandemic has created a series of crises on the front lines of business, commerce, and federations, partners, and beneficiary agencies are no different, except they have the added burden of being frontline service providers to those affected. CARES Act funding, stimulus packages, the Paycheck Protection Program, and charitable giving deductions have been a lifeline to nonprofits, but they are not enough. What can Congress do to ensure that charities can continue their vital work during the pandemic?
Thank you, Rachel. That's a great question. So first, they need to get back to work. Your question illustrates exactly what's wrong in Washington. We needed a second stimulus weeks ago. Businesses have been closed at no fault of their own. Many and many more will be forced to declare bankruptcy because they're struggling right now. And I know, look, our schools are also struggling. I'm a father of 3 school-age children. They're struggling with extra costs, and Washington has done too little. Charitable causes, which are doing their best to help the unemployed, the hungry, and the destitute, are stymied because Congress is playing partisan political games while people suffer. Here in New Jersey, look, we've seen the highest number of COVID deaths per 100,000 than any other state in the country. More than half were at the hands of our governor, who moved vulnerable elderly patients into nursing homes and long-term care facilities. When I get to Washington, one of my first orders of business will be to have a Senate hearing on the misuse of state health officials of federal dollars in keeping proper compliance procedures that could have saved thousands of lives. My opponent keeps ignoring that so many of our elderly have unnecessarily perished. So in order to do this, it's high time we elect new senators and members of Congress who want to be problem solvers instead of podium chasers. We don't need senators to cast theatrics, let's say during Judiciary Committee hearings, and deliver their campaign speech in Senate in hopes to have what should be an independent Supreme Court justice and have them side with them on a political agenda. We have too many partisans in Congress from New Jersey who think that the hard work of legislating is done by ranting on talk TV. We have serious problems in our country. We need serious legislators, ones that understand the issues that face New Jersey and face America. Second order of business, as I mentioned, is passing a bill that helps the people of this country sustain themselves until a safe vaccine is found and administered to the American people. If I'm elected in November, it will be my top priority, helping small businesses sustain themselves until everything is fully reopened, get help to the unemployed, replenish the depleted funds of our charitable organizations so they can also help those adversely affected by our pandemic. We need to empower our communities to help our friends and neighbors, Rachel. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Our next question is from Daron Steger, representing the Jewish Federation of Somerset, Hunterdon, and Warren counties. Daron? Go ahead, Daron.
Hi, Dr. Mehta. The question I have is on anti-Semitism and hate crimes against Jews have been on the rise in this country, including acts of violence, threats and harassment, vandalism, and a resurgence of white supremacist activity. Additionally, discrimination on our college campuses in the form of BDS threatens Jewish students and faculty. What actions should Congress take to protect its citizens from anti-Semitism, specifically, and from religious discrimination and hate crimes more generally?
Yeah. Daron, thanks for that very important question. Look, this issue really upsets me. I condemn in every fiber of my being people and groups that perpetuate hate. We are a diverse country. We have a unique and thriving culture because we are a nation of immigrants from all parts of the world. In fact, 1/3 of New Jersey are immigrants from somewhere else with different religious backgrounds and beliefs that make America the melting pot it is. That diversity is a source of strength, not a weakness. It comes from tolerating others who may not look or act or talk like you, but are Americans at heart. People with different customs and languages, outlooks, beliefs, and religions. We advance our democracy and perfect our republic by the civilized exchange of ideas and beliefs. I know I'm a man who is intolerant of intolerance. As someone who grew up in the throes of racism, as a man of color and a first-generation immigrant, I know firsthand the pain of intolerance. But I know we can overcome it. I know we have to advance the conversation. In fact, I stand here before you as the first person of color to win the Republican nomination in the history of New Jersey. Look, we can criminalize hateful behavior, and we should. And whenever possible, we should prosecute those who engage in it to the fullest extent of the law. In order to do that, we need a fully funded police force and a belief in law and order. The hate crimes against my Jewish brothers and sisters in Jersey City was painful to me. That's why I will never seek to defund our police like my opponent seeks to do, or funding to educate on tolerance and fighting anti-Semitism. It's why my wife and I have donated money to former Assemblyman Dov Hikin's Americans Against Anti-Semitism organization and stood with him when he started to present and talk about such hateful crimes that continue to perpetuate in our country of religious freedoms. In this day and age, honestly, Dov's group shouldn't even have to exist. You know, it's more difficult to pass a law that expels hatred from the heart of persons who gives it a home. So first and foremost, our leaders need to set an example. When haters see public officials spewing hate, it emboldens them. And second, it falls to those in public life to call out those who peddle it, denounce it when they see it, and ostracize those who engage in it. And third, all of us in public life to lead the way in celebrating our diversity, tolerance of opposing views, and the freedom to worship our God in the way we see it. It's a very important question, Doran. I really appreciate you asking me that. And I really hope when I get to Washington that we're going to advance the conversation on this.
With rumblings on the political extremes to cut or condition aid to Israel, what should Congress do to guarantee aid to Israel, as well as ensuring the continued special relationship regarding joint exercises, training, intelligence sharing, and other staff level partnerships?
Sure. Yeah, again, another very important question. So thanks for asking that. Look, Israel is an essential American partner in a region of the world where there are countries filled with hatred towards America. And that's the honest truth. And too many of Israel's neighbors hate us precisely because of who we are, the way we live, and the freedoms we accord American citizens. And they hate Israel for being a strategic American partner. Not only is Israel a key military ally, we share special bonds because of our belief in freedom, democratic rule, and the inherent dignity of all humankind. There will always be political extremists whose views and rhetoric defy common sense. They have a right to their opinion. That does not mean we have to abide to their beliefs. For my part, let me tell you, you may rest assured that I view Israel as America's most important strategic ally in the Middle East, a source of stability in a region of the world where we need an ally, a source of stability in a region of the world where stability is needed, a beacon and an example of freedom in a region of the world where too many are persecuted for their beliefs and customs. That's why it is so important that President Trump accomplished what other presidents could not do, the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Let me be clear, I support this move, but my opponent, Cory Booker, did not. The United States must continue an active presence in the Middle East in order to ensure a vibrant and strong Israel. To this end, I fully support increased aid to Israel and believe it is critical that the United States continues to supply Israel with defense tools and weapons to protect their citizens and national interest. In the face of continued attack, Israel must be able to defend itself. Specifically, it's crucial that we maintain the U.S.-Israeli security MOU. Delivers $3.3 billion in security assistance and $500 million in cooperative missile defense funding. Ensuring that Israel continues to carry the flag of freedom in the Middle East is not only important for the people of Israel, but also the United States. So to me, Josh, maintaining our friendship, our military alliance, and our intelligence sharing is a no-brainer. To me, doing what we can to make it even stronger is a policy to pursue when I get to Washington, and I won't equivocate on that.
Great, thank you, I appreciate your answer. Our next question comes from Joan Fisher. Joan is a board member at the Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey. Joan?
You need to unmute yourself.
Joan, you're on mute.
Oh, I didn't realize that, sorry. In 2016, President Trump pulled out of JCPOA, better known as the Iran deal, without offering an alternative plan. Do you think the Iran deal was the right way to prevent Iran's path to nuclear weaponry? If Iran returns to strict compliance with the nuclear deal, should we rejoin NCPOA? And what other measures in the Senate would you take to contain this rogue nation?
Thank you, Joan. My answer is no. No. Look, I don't trust Iran. I don't trust its government. I don't believe anything its leaders say or any assurance they make to abide any treaty or agreement. I believe they're hell-bent on developing nuclear weapon capabilities no matter what they say or sign. It's a rogue regime, a backward nation that foments hatred, civil unrest, and terrorism against those who don't abide by their fanaticism. The world will be a better place when more tolerant elements of their population rise up and overthrow the current government. The world is not made a better place by nations that foment racial and religious division. The world will be a better place when the government of Iran crumbles. I believe the US policy should be to maintain the pressure of sanctions, to strengthen our alliance with Israel, to discourage other nations from doing business with Iran, to help in any way possible those inside the country who would bring to fruition a more moderate government that would like to live in peace in the larger community of nations. Look, Iran cannot, under any circumstance, develop or acquire nuclear weapons. Any country that has a leader who promotes chants of death to America or who has openly stated they will use nuclear weapons to wipe Israel off the map cannot be trusted. So I wholeheartedly support President Trump's withdrawal from the JCPOA. As a senator, I will oppose any attempts to reconstitute this disastrous policy. While I fully support deploying all diplomatic and economic means to promote peace in the region, I also would support military action if all other avenues of negotiation have failed. Look, Israel has a sovereign right to take military action to protect itself, and the US has an obligation to deny Iran the ability to acquire nuclear weapons. So furthermore, let me just say one more thing. I support strict sanctions on Iran in order to bring down the mullahs in Iran. These terrorists continue to provide hundreds of thousands of missiles to Hezbollah, threatening and hurting Israel on an ongoing basis. Lastly, and I'll tell you this, I'll support funding to help Israel stop the establishment of a third front in Syria. I think this is a really important topic. With everything going on in our country, sometimes we forget about our foreign relations and our threat to democracy and our threat to our nation. And this is one that we can't equivocate on either, unlike my opponent. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Jody Kaplan. Jody is the immediate past president of Women's Philanthropy at the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West New Jersey. Jody?
Thank you. Politics in this country have become fiercely partisan and bitterly divisive. Describe how you would work to restore faith in our political system and reach across the aisle in the spirit of bipartisanship to tackle our nation's problems. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, again, thank you again for allowing me to talk about my views on Israel, but I want to share a few others. Right now, we don't have time for partisan hacks or clowns in Washington. We really don't. We need serious people who want to be serious legislators, willing to do the hard work of legislating, showing up to work. We need authentic leadership. That means not saying one thing and doing another when you get to Washington. So unlike my opponent, I'm not a career politician, and I'm not looking to build my career in politics off the backs of our proud communities. The future of our republic is at stake. I got to go home. I got to be able to sleep at night and look my wife and my kids in the face. So I will always be an authentic leader. At the end of the 20th century, America was the world's lone superpower. Today, we face an existential threat. We've allowed China to take our American jobs, steal our technology, violate our trade agreements, damage our economy by manipulating their currency and building a navy now that exceeds the size of ours. We've learned during this pandemic that China is not and will never be a trusted trading partner. Look, no American can expect that medical equipment or drugs manufactured in China will meet the same rigorous standards required of American manufacturers. It's time to bring those jobs back to New Jersey. We cannot win the war of COVID by spewing hate and sowing division or arguing about who didn't do what. We're not going to be able to compete with China when we have an economy crippled by a disease. We can't get New Jersey's economy out of the absent bipartisan approach from a New Jersey senator willing to roll up their sleeves and get it done. My opponent spent too much time fighting politics with the president. For him, he couldn't accept when the sky is blue, it's blue. So then he ran for president before finishing his first term. He missed 65% of the votes rather than doing his job he was elected to do. I previously ran a health department and fought against issues like high infant mortality rates in Black and brown babies in New Jersey, as one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the country. You know, that means that 9 out of 1,000 Black babies will never see the age of 1. That's unacceptable. We need more than just stimulus money. We have to fix our gateway tunnel, restore the state and local tax deductions, break out of our cycles of poverty, and put the state's economy back on track. We need dedicated, smart folks that want to go bring family values and authentic leadership back to Washington. That's what we need here in New Jersey. Getting that done is going to require bipartisan talks, bipartisan legislation, and bipartisan cooperation. That's the kind of man I am. It's the kind of senator I will be. I will be there for the people of New Jersey and act like my kids' lives depend on it, because they do. Look, as a father and a husband, I want to make New Jersey a place to live, not leave. I want to make sure that our economy is on track, that we end COVID, and that regardless of religion, race, or creed, there's opportunities for all our children. Thank you for that question. Back to you, moderator.
Right. Roy, are you with us? Do you have, or would you like me to transition to the next part? Dr. Mehta, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your participation in tonight's forum, outlining your positions, and for taking the time to be with us. We want to wish you the best of luck with the rest of your campaign over the next few weeks. To everyone watching, once again, thank you for joining us for the Senatorial Candidates Forum. We're going to transition to the second part of our program with Senator Booker in just 1 minute. Dr. Mehta, we're going to place you in listen-only mode, so if you'd like to continue to participate as a viewer, you're more than welcome to join us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Josh. I'm back. I was muted. So you want me to, when we get back, you want me to introduce Cory?
Yeah, we're going to do that now.
Okay. Right now?
Right.
Okay.
As soon as the senator's on screen, yes.
You tell me when.
How about right now?
Right now? Okay. Good evening and welcome back to our Senatorial Forum. I am still Roy Tanzman, and I'm still chair of the Jewish Federations of New Jersey and a past chair and member of the Board of Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey. It is my pleasure to introduce United States Senator Cory Booker. Cory is an American politician, attorney, and author. He has served as a junior U.S. Senator from New Jersey since 2013. He's a member of the Democratic Party, and he's the first African-American U.S. Senator from New Jersey. He was previously the 38th mayor of Newark from 2006 to 2013. And before that, he served on the Municipal Council of Newark for the Central Ward from 1998 to 2002. He is a graduate of Stanford University, where he received his BA in 1991, and then a master's degree a year later. He studied abroad at the University of Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship before attending Yale Law School. And Senator Booker, before we let you speak, I just wanted to let you know that there are 5 different Jewish federations represented here. The Jewish Federations of Northern New Jersey, Greater Metro West New Jersey, Heart of New Jersey, which is my federation, Somerset, Hunterdon, and Warren counties, and Southern New Jersey, as well as the AJC of New Jersey. And of course, you know, we're a diverse community in terms of our political views and Jewish religious affiliation. We are all inspired by the same Jewish values and care deeply about the core issues like the U.S.-Israel relationship, the rise of hate and anti-Semitism, and the Jewish imperative to care for the communities most vulnerable. So we really appreciate you being here this evening to address us, and the floor is yours.
Roy, thank you so much. I appreciate you, appreciate your leadership over the years. And thank you to everyone for creating this extraordinary platform where candidates can speak to the issues, ideas, and common virtues that we all hold dear. I know I've got a few minutes for introduction, and I'd rather be more personal than talking about the politics of the day. And just let everybody know, if you don't already, so much of my life right now owes to the activism of Jewish Americans who saw that religion is best seen, that we are a nation where people who put their values into practice is what ensures us to live up to our hope and our promise. In the years before I was born, my parents began to look at moving to New Jersey. And by 1969, when they started looking for homes in the sections of our state with the best, highest ranked public schools, they would show up to houses to look at and be turned away. And they were frustrated and didn't know what to do, but they found a group of activists in the northern New Jersey area, blacks and whites, Christians and Jews, who all met together. And they were scheming to help black families integrate suburban areas of New Jersey. And amazingly, when my parents, after working with the group, they would go out and look for homes. And when they were told the home was sold or pulled off the market, when they were lied to, the group of activists would send a white couple to pose as my parents to buy a home. Well, in the house I grew up in New Jersey, they were told it was sold immediately, and a white couple came afterwards, found out the house was still for sale, put a bid on the house. The bid was accepted, papers were drawn up, and on the day of the closing, the white couple didn't show up. My father did, and a Jewish man named Marty Friedman, his lawyer, volunteering his time to represent my family. And my father tells the story. They walked into the real estate agent's office. Marty began to make a very firm statement about his violation of the fair housing laws. But the real estate agent stands up and punches Marty in the face and sigs a dog on my dad. And let me tell you, as I was growing up in Harrington Park, New Jersey, every time my dad would tell this story, the dog would get bigger. But my parents never let me forget, as I was growing up in this incredible New Jersey town. By the time I was 18 years old, I was a high school All-American football player, on my way to Stanford University, president of my high school class. They never let me forget that I drink deeply from wells of freedom, liberty, and opportunity that I didn't dig. That I come from a community of people in New Jersey who put their values into practice, who live the highest ideals of our nation, who live the ideals of their faith, like chesed and tzedakah, and got involved and got engaged. My parents raised me knowing the names of people like Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, like Abraham Joshua Heschel, even New Jersey's own Rabbi Yocham Prince, who spoke on the March on Washington right before Martin Luther King. I'm so honored to be your senator right now, to have worked with the Jewish community, not just on issues facing Israel or issues facing Jews in New Jersey, but in the true Jewish way. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? In the true Jewish way, I've been honored to be able to partner with the Jewish community in fighting for our state and our nation, and fighting for our children and our elderly, and fighting for justice. I pray, Bizrat Hashem, God willing, I will have another 6 years as your representative, as your senator, to continue to work in partnership with you to heal this world, to tikkun olam, and make it a better place.
Great. Thank you, Senator Booker. We're now going to take questions from the audience. We ask that responses to each question be limited to 2 minutes. Our first question is from David Saginaw. David is the president of the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West New Jersey. David?
Thank you, Josh. Senator Booker, the pandemic has created a series of crises on the front lines of business and commerce. Jewish federations and their partner agencies are no different, except they have the added burden of being frontline service providers to those affected. CARES Act funding, stimulus packages, the Paycheck Protection Program, charitable giving deductions are all lifelines to nonprofits. However, they are not enough. What can Congress do to ensure that charities can continue their vital work during the pandemic?
I'm really grateful for the question, and we are in the midst of the 4th largest mass casualty event in the history of our country. We are in the midst of a result of that health crisis. We are also seeing a severe economic crisis that is undermining so many of our nonprofits around our state. I tell you right now, I've met with everyone from our food providers and food banks, virtually through Zoom, all the way to many of the charities that deal with mental health issues or domestic violence issues. And we are seeing all across this state struggle. And so first and foremost, as your senator, I wanted to fight to make sure that programs like the PPP, the grant programs that were available to businesses, were also available to nonprofits. I believe that our nonprofits are continuing to struggle and should be made available for generous grant opportunities in the same way that our small businesses are. Now, right now on the Senate floor, to be candid, we have not seen any action, as Mitch McConnell has refused to do the kind of generous COVID package that we need to do. My prayer is that Mitch McConnell will no longer be the Senate Majority Leader, and we will be able to move quickly as soon as this election's over into getting a significant aid package in that will focus on not just state and local money, which is important, unemployment benefits, which is important, our hospitals, which are important, but also remembering that nonprofits are financially have been severely injured by the challenges we're seeing here. I would also like to see, and I have some of my friends, even on the other side of the aisle, ways that we could better incentivize contributions to nonprofits as well. And I have some ideas that I am trying to build bipartisan support for that could perhaps help make it so that people who are making charitable donations can get more of a deduction in order to incentivize even more of them. And then finally, the reason why we have a demand on so many of our serving agencies is because we have failed to step up, as even the Trump-appointed head of the Federal Reserve says we should be doing, which is by putting more money and more stimulus out there. I was one of the people that led in the Senate for the first round of stimulus checks, the $1,200 that went to so many families, that got hundreds of millions of dollars into the pockets of New Jersey citizens. I want to make sure that the next COVID package really focuses on the people in need, the people who are struggling, to begin to give some more financial security in this horrific financial storm that we're in, and thus allowing more families to be independent and to be strong.
Thank you. Our next question is from Amy Mallet. Amy is a board member and a member of the JCRC at the Jewish Federation in the heart of New Jersey. Amy?
Hello. Hello, Senator. It's good to see you again.
Amy, it's great to see you as well.
Thank you so much. And as you know, anti-Semitism and hate crimes against Jews and minority groups have been on the rise in this country, including acts of violence, threats, harassment, vandalism, and a resurgence of white supremacist activity. Additionally, discrimination and delegitimization on our college campuses in the form of BDS threatens Jewish students and faculty. What actions should Congress take to protect its citizens from anti-Semitism specifically, and from religious discrimination and hate crimes more generally? Thank you so much.
No, Amy, thank you. And before I even get to Congress, all of us have a moral urgency when you see the rise in anti-Semitism to be acting and working. Before I became your senator, heck, even back when Abe Foxman was leading the ADL, it has been, I've been doing a lot and leading a lot to fight anti-Semitism, and to do it in areas from college campuses and students. And I want to talk about BDS in a second, but all the way to protecting our community. So this is something that we must have, all of us, those of us who have titles, those of us who are leaders, those of us who are activists, condemning anti-Semitism, but never sleeping on the reality that this scourge will always try to rear its ugliness, and we have to be together in that fight. But you specifically asked about Congress, and it's something that I've been able to work in a bipartisan way already, most recently with legislation with Rob Portman, in doing things that condemn and empower us against anti-Semitism. Martin Luther King said it very clearly also, though, I may not be able to pass a law to make you love me, but I can pass laws to stop you from lynching me. I may not be able to pass laws to change a heart, but I can pass laws to restrain the heartless. And so I've led, and I want to give a lot of credit to my partner, Senator Bob Menendez, in bringing dollars home to Jewish organizations, to synagogues and shuls, as well as community centers, so that you may have more resources from the federal government to hire security, to install technology, and do other things to keep us safe during this time. I do a lot of work in coordination with law enforcement on the federal, state, and local level to make sure that we keep our community safe. But I am worried about the rise of things like BDS, which years ago I talked about it having problematic roots amongst those who hate Jews and want to see Israel delegitimized. And this is something that we cannot tolerate. I've been active not only in speaking out against the BDS movement, but also in crafting bipartisan legislation in order to stop BDS. I've been frustrated, frankly, with Mitch McConnell, who had a chance to put the bipartisan bill on the floor, which could have gotten 90 to 98 senators supporting it, the world's greatest deliberative body speaking out against BDS. But he failed to pull the bipartisan bill that would have accomplished that. I will not stop. I will not yield. I will not in any way rest until we, as a Senate, speak to these urgent issues. But you all know this. Whatever title I hold, for years now, I've been working in partnership with Jewish organizations on these issues, from Black-Jewish relations all the way to trying to unify across the lines that divide us, affirming the ties that bind us around the importance and the urgency of speaking out against hate, speaking out against anti-Semitism, because at the end of the day, anti-Semitism is not a Jewish issue. Anti-Semitism is an American issue, and we all must join together in a chorus of condemnation of any kind of hate whatsoever.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Jeff Shacket. Jeff is the JCRC president at the Jewish Federation of Southern New Jersey. Jeff?
Good evening, Senator. There are rumblings on the political extremes to cut or condition aid to Israel. What should Congress do to guarantee that aid and to ensure the continued special relationship between the nations regarding joint exercises, training and intelligence sharing, and other partnerships?
Well, again, I'm your senator and not on my watch. I will say that very unequivocally, not on my watch. This is a national security issue for the United States of America. Israel is an indispensable ally to our safety and our security and our strength as a nation. And we all must understand that we stand in lockstep with the state of Israel, and we cannot allow that alliance to weaken in any way. To do so would not just be a threat to Israel, but would be a threat to the United States of America as well. I serve on the Foreign Relations Committee. I've been the chair, the ranking member on the Africa Coalition, but I will tell you this, there is no area of the world I have traveled to more than the region of Israel. My last trip was to Lebanon to really assess the strength of Hezbollah and the horrific reality of the growing Iranian menace in the region and the more sophisticated missiles that they have. I have stood in partnership with Bob Menendez, supporting every plus up of possible of support for the defense of the state of Israel, from the Iron Dome to David Sling, to going out myself to view the anti-tunneling technology that the United States helped to provide, standing with Israeli soldiers and American soldiers who were working to stop the abduction of Israeli citizens, American soldiers and Israeli soldiers. The defense of the state of Israel is of prime importance, and the United States of America will stand strong. I can tell you that clearly. I want to add, though, because I've had this conversation with Bibi Netanyahu, I've had this conversation with various other Israeli leaders, is that we have to, in every way possible, maintain a bipartisan commitment to the state of Israel. I felt that one of my roles is to continue to make sure that this is not a left-right issue. It's an American commitment that we keep. And I'm going to continue as New Jersey senator, but also as a Democrat, to make sure that the wings of parties do not do things to undermine that commitment, that people don't use political opportunism as a way of undermining the connections that we have in this country and the commitment we have in this country to the state of Israel. So I am confident, and I know there's concerns, and I have this conversation both with friends, to leaders in the New Jersey Jewish community, that we will not allow anything to erode or undermine this bipartisan commitment, because unfortunately, the neighborhood in which Israel stands is the only democracy. That neighborhood is getting more dangerous over the last 4 to 5 years and not less. And it's more of a time that we need to continue to that commitment that has made the Israel-American alliance so strong for decades now.
Great. Thank you so much. We'll be joined now by Susan Knopping, a member of the board and CRC member at the Jewish Federation of Somerset, Hunterdon, and Warren counties. Susan?
Good evening, senators. Good to see you again. In 2016, President Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, better known as the Iran deal, without offering an alternative plan. Do you think the Iran deal was the right way to prevent Iran's path to a nuclear weapon? And if Iran returns to strict compliance with the nuclear deal, should we rejoin the JCPOA? And what other measures in the Senate would you take to contain this rogue nation?
Gosh, Susan, thank you for the question. And let me just say off the top that Iran will not get a nuclear weapon, will not. And I'll explain what I mean by that. But to be particular about the JCPOA, I supported it and wrote a very long piece in around the time of why it was an inadequate deal, but why I still thought it was worth supporting. In other words, it left a lot on the table that still did not deal with Iran's bad actions in that community. Now, we were in a partnership. It was something that we committed to as a country, and we had our allies in Europe, as well as Russia and China, all within that deal. Even people who did not support that deal, like Senator Menendez, for example, did not agree that we should rip it up and shred it and allow, unfortunately, what's happened now is Iran has gone back to enriching uranium at an unacceptable amount. They went from where, as you remember, Netanyahu and others were saying that they were on the verge, their breakout time, according to Israeli intelligence, the United States intelligence, before the JCPOA was being measured in hours, if not days and months, to pushing it back 5, 10, 15 years, their pathway. Now, again, we're tumbling back towards a shorter and shorter breakout period, and that is unacceptable. Your question specifically of what I support going back into it, I still remember, I don't know if anybody remembers, but I ran for president last year. And I still remember one of those moments where I was on the debate stage and they asked, would you all go back into the deal? Would you raise your hand? And I sat there unmoved, but everybody around me was raising their hand that we should go right back into the deal. And I thought that doesn't make any sense whatsoever to be flagging to the Iranians that we are going to default back in that deal. No, what we should be doing is going back to the table and trying to get the best deal possible, doing everything we can, not just on their nuclear issues, but we know that Iran, thanks to the awful actions of Donald Trump of surrendering territory in Syria, Iran has been expanding their operations. They have a highway through Syria to get weapons now better to Hezbollah. This is one of the reasons why the Israelis have been doing more bombing runs to try to stop those deliveries of missiles. We now know Iran has expanded their influence in Iraq. We know Iran has expanded their influence in even places like Afghanistan and the horrific war going on in Yemen. Iran has become more dangerous. They are fueling terrorism in a greater ways around that region, from Hamas to Hezbollah to the horrors and the challenges we're facing still in Iraq. And so we have to have a strategy to deal with Iran that's inclusive of preventing them from getting a nuclear weapon, but also stopping their terroristic activities, their funding of terrorist organizations, and their supplying of terrorist organizations with more and more technologically sophisticated weaponry. And so I'm not for just jumping right back in. I'm for trying to figure out a way to stand with our critical allies and pull together a coalition to contain what is one of the planet's greatest menaces, which is Iran.
Thank you. Our next question is from Yehuda Cohen. Yehuda is a JCRC Executive Committee member at the Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey. Yehuda?
Thank you. Good evening, Senator Booker. Politics in this country have become fiercely partisan and bitterly divisive. Describe the ways you would work to restore faith in our political system and reach across the aisle in the spirit of bipartisanship to tackle our nation's problems.
Yehuda, thank you for the question. In many ways, this has been the driving purpose, one of the driving purposes of my life, is to try to find a way to unite people. And that's not a plug for the book I wrote called United, talking about Americans finding common ground. When I was mayor of the city of Newark, and we experienced our biggest economic development period in generations, doubled the production of affordable housing, the rate of production, transformed our schools to now the #1 school system in America for beat the odds schools. I didn't do that a Republican way or a Democratic way. I dealt it by pulling people together. I just talked to Chris Christie a few nights ago. He was the governor of the state. we could write a dissertation on our disagreements, but we forged a friendship and common ground to work on. I worked with everybody from the Manhattan Institute, a right-leaning think tank, all the way to the ACLU to provide better security and protection and innovations in criminal justice reform. When I went to Washington, D.C., I didn't go down to be New Jersey's Democratic senator. I went down to be the senator, and I took Bill Bradley's advice, who I talked to earlier today as well, to go out to take my colleagues out to dinner, to go sit in their offices. I still remember people's faces when me and Ted Cruz were out eating dinner. And let me tell you, even choosing a restaurant with Ted Cruz was difficult because I'm a vegan and he's from Texas. But he and I passed legislation together to better help areas like New Jersey recover after natural disasters. I've got one of the best records in the Senate for a freshman of working across the aisle, getting things done, and passing big pieces of legislation. Donald Trump has signed a number of pieces of legislation that I wrote. And so I'm just a big believer that we've got to heal our country and heal these divides. I'm really honored that people like Rik Mehta have chosen to run. I've got nothing to say in any way to assault his dignity or twist his words. I think we need to start listening to how we talk about each other. I think that we need to start leading with more kindness and decency. And I think in our country, we need a revival of civic grace. And this way we have of dehumanizing each other and degrading each other. Go in the comment section of any digital post, and you're starting to see something that's hurting us. And let me tell you, I have access to classified information. Our enemies know this. They literally are going on our social media platforms and trying to make us hate each other. And so you all know this, you've known me long enough. I'm going to continue in my career, not just to speak to principles of love and decency and kindness, which we need in our civic spaces, but work to model it. And I'm going to be one of those activists in Congress, as well as in communities across New Jersey, of trying to bring people together and do what I think is the calling of every generation, which is to try in every way possible to put more indivisible back into this one nation under God.
Great. Thank you, Senator Booker. I'm going to turn it over to Roy to offer some closing remarks.
Can you hear me? Am I on? I'm on? Okay. Thank you, Senator Booker. We really appreciate your participation in tonight's forum, outlining your positions and for taking time to be with us. And it's nice to see you again, even though only on a Zoom.
Roy, it's great to see you. I can't wait till we can see each other in person, but just want to say thank you.
Say hello to Matt.
I will, most definitely.
We just want to wish you the best of luck with the campaign, and we want to thank everybody for watching tonight and joining the candidates. I think it was very informative. And make sure you fill out your mail-in ballots, send them in early, have your voice heard, and enjoy the evening. So thank you, everybody. And good night.